Welcome to another edition of Coaching Minute with Brianne Ligori and Friends, where certified coaches help leaders to elevate their coaching skills so they're better able to lead today's modern workforce. Today's guest is Linda Walker. Linda is a certified coach who spends her time doing leadership coaching as well as communication coaching. Prior to that, she spent many years in the corporate world, specifically in pharmaceuticals, helping leaders to elevate their coaching skills so they are better able to lead their teams. And fun fact, I actually had the opportunity to work directly on one of Linda's teams, and she was the most inspiring mentor, coach, leader that I've ever had. And I'm just so grateful to have her here with us today to share her wisdom with you. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you for having me and for such a warm introduction. That's nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you taught me pretty much everything that I know. You were sort of the fire behind me becoming a certified coach, and I just truly love our conversation. So really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait.
Yeah. So you spent really the bulk of your career developing other leaders, helping them develop their coaching skills, because of course we know when we're coaching rather than telling, we're so much more effective in what we do. So from your perspective, what advice would you give leaders that would like to start using more coaching with their teams?
I think that the first thing that comes to mind is to learn more about coaching. When I embarked on the journey of becoming a certified coach, I thought I was a great coach. And when I learned more about what coaching is and isn't, I realized I was pretty good at giving advice and being nice to people and encouraging them, etc. But I didn't know the first thing about coaching. So learning about coaching would be really helpful. And then once you know that, I think it's powerful to share your intentions with your team and let them know what you're trying to learn about and what you're trying to accomplish and why and how they're going to benefit. By sharing the intention, it helps people buy into the process and to lean into it more. I also think that just do it, right? You don't need to wait until you're a perfect coach to start coaching. So start somewhere, anywhere at all, ask a few more questions than you're used to, and see what happens. It can be quite inspiring and magical.
Yes,
do it, right?
Just do it.
Yeah.
I love that. There's so much there in what you said. And I really love the piece that you mentioned around educating your team on what to expect with coaching. Because sometimes if we start showing up in a different way where maybe we've always given advice and now we're asking questions, people might kind of go, what happened? Like, what's going on here?
What are you doing? Why are you acting weird?
This is weird. Yeah. So just sharing with them the difference of what coaching is and what are the benefits of that. I think it makes all the difference with our teams.
Yeah. And it even makes a difference for us because when we're learning something new, and if you haven't done a lot of pure coaching, that is new, and you're used to giving advice, then you're going to feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable. And by sharing the intention, it's kind of I always say it as your get out of jail free card. If you stumble a bit or you're not perfect at it, then you're not so worried about being judged or looking bad. So
yes,
it's useful for sure.
So useful. And you mentioned just do it, like just do the coaching. A lot of leaders struggle to prioritize time for it because they think, oh, coaching is going to take a lot of time. It's quicker to tell. What advice do you have for leaders that are struggling to prioritize time to coach their team?
Prioritizing time comes up a lot in the leaders I coach, even when the topic isn't about coaching itself. And this is what I always say. If a senior leader or a CEO asked you to do something, you would make time for it. Whenever something is like mission critical to business, leaders find a way to do it. They prioritize it and they get it done. So I think it's a really useful thing to see coaching as mission critical because it really is the number one biggest tool for helping your team grow, develop, increase their capability. And so if you think of the investment of time and knowing that if people get more capable as a result of being coached, you're actually going to save time in the long run, because they're going to be better at doing what they need to do. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And so helping them to get better at their jobs through
Yep.
asking questions and helping them become more capable. I really almost see it as like when we're giving advice, it's like this vicious cycle where they just keep coming back for more and they become dependent on us, rather than you're saying is helping them to be able to figure things out on their own.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the old fable of, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. The other thing that happened to me when I started asking more questions and encouraging people to figure it out for themselves, what a humbling experience, because a lot of times people came up with things I wouldn't have thought of, and maybe wouldn't have even judged as being the right way to go. And I, over and over again, countless times, I was so impressed that the things people came up with were far superior to anything I might have suggested. Not always, but often enough to really humble me as a leader, and to realizing if you help people figure it out for themselves, you end up with a much better result in the end. Better commitment, better buy-in, and again, often a better solution.
Yes. What I'm hearing from what you're saying is about really trusting the process. Like trusting that it is okay if they come up with an idea that sits outside of the box that you would consider okay.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of leaders get really stuck. Like, we do coach training across the world, and one of the biggest things that a lot of leaders say is like, what if they come up with an idea that's not good?
Yeah.
And I always say, what's the worst that could happen at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and even if the solution they come up with doesn't work, people learn through mistakes. So unless someone's going to die or business is going to plummet, there's very low risk. And you can also use more questions to help them explore additional ideas too. And they might kind of figure out on their own through that conversation, actually, I have a better idea than the first one I had.
Yes, that's so true.
You also talked about how do you make the time. And I think if you don't, kind of have that full, I'm going to sit down for an hour and coach you, at least take a coaching approach, ask a few questions before you jump into the advice.
Yeah, that's one thing you taught me, Linda, is like, you can coach when you're literally passing by in the hallway. When I used to stop you and say, hey, Linda, I have this situation. Instead of telling me a suggestion, you'd actually ask me a question that would get me kind of thinking, and then I would go off and think about it and then come back and we'd have an even better conversation. Yeah,
it's, it gets down to don't overthink it. Just ask a couple of questions. It's powerful. It works.
It's back to that, just do it.
Yeah.
Often when we're implementing more coaching, and because you did this so many times throughout your career, I'm curious around barriers. We often come up against barriers in implementing more coaching. So what barriers did you come up against in your organizations, and how did you overcome them?
Well, with my team, I think the only real barrier was habit. So I was in a habit of telling people good advice, and that was a habit I had. But other people's habit of wanting a quick answer, like, Linda, tell me what I should do here. So it's really about breaking that habit so that you don't move toward the easiest solution. I think the solution to that is really just educating people on what coaching is, why it will benefit them, and practicing. If you enlist people's help, I'm trying to learn the skill of coaching. Can I try this out on you? I'm going to ask you questions. That enables you as a leader to practice. And when you practice something, it gets easier to form a new habit. So that's kind of what I did with my team. And, when people experience real coaching a few times, they're already bought in because they can see how powerful it is to come up with their own solutions. Within organizations, again, it's about educating people on what coaching is. to get buy-in to build programs, I would just coach the most senior leaders. And once they experience, they're like, this is, I remember one CEO saying, everyone needs to experience this. So putting them through it at all levels, you know, the first line leaders and the CEOs, and, you know, bridging it up and down. I think that's how I overcame many barriers.
Yeah, that's one big thing I definitely learned from you as we implement coaching with many organizations across the world, is sort of that up and down approach where it's not just the first line managers, right? Like, you know, CEOs aren't above coaching. They should be coaching their teams. We all need coaching. We all need to coach each other. And when we do that together, we start to almost create a bit more of a coaching culture in the organization.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And even just letting employees who aren't people managers, letting them know what coaching is, what to expect, how it's going to help them, how they can use that skill themselves on each other, on their peers. It's got to happen in all directions.
Yes, absolutely. It's like creating a bit of a coaching community within organizations where we're all working to elevate each other and help each other learn.
Yeah, it changes the culture eventually.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So thinking about, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember being one of the only people who had this coaching certification or expertise, and then, you know, encouraging you and other people on the team to learn more about coaching, and watching what that can do for people and do for the people around them and the people you eventually led and your colleagues. And it's so cool to watch that shift in the culture once people start to realize the benefits.
Yes, truly transformational.
Yeah.
Yes. So thinking about the skills that we use during coaching, of course, asking questions is one of the major ones that we talked about. Sometimes leaders can get kind of stuck in knowing what questions to ask, right? Like often they kind of have one good question that they kick off with, and then they're like, oh my gosh, what do I ask next? Where do I go? They start getting in their head of thinking about all these crafty questions. So what advice would you give those leaders that are kind of getting in their head and not really sure where to take a coaching conversation?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is to use a process. So as you know, at LCI, you're teaching kind of a process to follow when you're coaching someone. So questions about the goal someone's trying to achieve, what's getting in their way of achieving it, what are some possibilities they can think of, what are they willing to commit to. So having that process is really helpful. Again, I'd say don't overthink it. Any question will do. I don't think it doesn't have to be a fancy question to be a powerful question. But I think the easiest is to ask a question based on whatever the person just said. Right? And you can't go wrong. And the cool thing about it is, if a question doesn't really land with someone, ask another one. It doesn't really matter. What else? You know, it's also helpful to have a few questions up your sleeve that kind of work in all scenarios. So one of my go-tos is just to say, you know, based on all of that, what would be helpful for you now? Kind of the magic question I go to when I don't know what else to ask.
Yeah, when in doubt, just sort of ask where they would like to go with the conversation. Yeah.
One of the most powerful things in coaching isn't even a question, it's silence.
Yes. A lot of people get really uncomfortable with silence. They're not really sure what to do. They get all kind of awkward, and it's really interesting to watch as people develop that skill to be able to just hold the space for somebody.
Yeah. And when someone's trying to think of solutions or ideas to help them achieve a goal, that silence is a time where their mind is ticking. And I'd say 9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, when I'm silent, people come up with more ideas. And those ideas are typically better than the first few.
Yeah. Yeah, because they're a little bit more below the surface of the typical stuff that we're thinking of. We have to kind of challenge ourselves to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's where creativity and innovation and all the good stuff comes.
All the juicy stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Linda, for sharing your wisdom today and for all your support over the years. I'm so truly grateful.
No, you're quite welcome. My pleasure. Anytime, Brianne. I hope
Really appreciate it. Absolutely. And for anyone interested in checking out Linda's work that she does in leadership coaching, communication coaching, definitely check out the links in the description. You can check out Linda's profile.
Thanks, Bri.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.